this is totally unrelated to the first question I was going to ask you, but like, did you do a football life documentary? There was about a 14-minute segment that was on YouTube, and it was you talking about a lot of the things that we talked about in our interview. But I think it was it's like an NFL Films thing called A Football Life. Did they do a segment on you?
Yeah, and I've been grateful and wondered about it ever since we did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did that, and they did it on Super Bowl I, as well as the one you're talking about, A Football Life, and then Super Bowl V, I think. So there was too much of me on the air when I was coaching at Georgia State, my guys would come up and say, "Coach, we saw you on television last night." And I'd say, "Yeah, that means you busted curfew because I don't come on till 2 a.m. They don't show those things till midnight or later."
I think we made it a little bit more of you with your stories and the access that you've had to different people across the years, and playing with Johnny Unitas, playing for Coach Shula, coaching at Alabama. I mean, it has been a football life, but it's also been an incredible life as well. So
it has. Just the happenstance, the sheer coincidence of being in the presence of that many great human beings is hard to believe. And people see that and wonder, oh, so do I. I didn't make it happen. I didn't dream it up, and I couldn't have in my wildest imagination.
Well, and on the way over here, we kind of took a little bit of a walk down memory lane. We stopped at the Varsity and had a couple chili dogs, and drove by Bobby Dodd Stadium, and so I guess what I'd like for you to do is just kind of paint us a picture of what life was like on the Georgia Tech campus in the early 1960s.
Well, if you were a football player, life was highly regimented, and you were forewarned. My dad was a Georgia Bulldog. I grew up going to Athens, staying with my grandparents, who lived about 3 blocks from Sanford Stadium. All my little jerseys and things were red and black. But there was this, I had gotten a hold of a map. Everybody assumed I would be a Bulldog when I started being recruited for football, College Park High School. But I had gotten hold of a map, and I realized with that map that Athens was not the closest campus to Agnes Scott College. Georgia Tech was the closest campus to Agnes Scott College. And at Agnes Scott College was going to be a young lady named Carolyn Newton. And I was not going to go very far from Carolyn Newton, and I still haven't. We've been married 62 years, and that's the main reason I went to Georgia Tech. But also, Coach Dodd, I was a lazy student, and Coach Bobby Dodd was famous for a lot of things. Coach Bryant, Alabama's great coach, wrote in his book, "I'd rather look across the field on Saturday and see anybody other than Dodd, because he could beat you with his brain." And he could. And Coach Dodd was so savvy when it came to football, but also about class attendance. He forced us to go to class. You either went to class, and for me that meant chemistry at 8 o'clock in the morning, or you ran up and down the west stands at what is now Bobby Dodd Stadium. You ran up and down the west stands until you could not stand up. And about my 50th time up and down those stadium steps, I made a decision. I decided that chemistry at 8 o'clock in the morning was a wonderful thing. But here's what matters. I never cut another class. He said, "You come here, you can graduate from one of the toughest schools in the world if you'll go to every single class, sit on the front row, take notes, and pay attention and look interested. You don't have to be interested, you just have to look interested. These college profs are human beings, and if you look interested, they'll take an interest in you, and they may tutor you a little bit." Well, that's exactly what happened. And it's the only reason I graduated. So I graduated from a very difficult school where I did not belong academically, only because my football coach loved me too much to allow me to self-destruct when I was 17 years old.
Now, he had an interesting reaction when you told him that you wanted to go into coaching.
Yeah, he said, "Get out of my office. That's the dumbest thing." No, he did say, "Bill Curry, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I want you to go be the president of an airline or something. Coaching is not a good profession. There aren't many good jobs. I got one of them, and I'm not going anywhere. So forget it." Well, that's one time I did not obey him.
At any point during your college football career, did you think about or dream about being the head coach at Alabama? What did you think about Alabama during that time? I know obviously it was a rivalry back then, and there was some vitriol between the two schools. And, you know, Coach Bryant had to famously wear a helmet into the stadium in '62. So what were your thoughts on Alabama at that time?
Great respect for the football team, playing against those guys. Leroy Jordan, Namath, Steve Sloan. Only respect for Coach Bryant. We had an incident where an Alabama player hit a Georgia Tech player. I'm not going to call names, and I don't want to dredge all that up. There was a lot of bad blood between the two schools, as you say, and it lasted years and years and years. And ironically, I even got caught in the middle of that. After I had played in the NFL for 10 years, I began to scout for the Green Bay Packers thanks to another Alabama graduate named Bart Starr, who had become one of my dearest friends ever. And we had great respect for each other, and he hired me. And I was at Alabama scouting the Alabama team. It's 1975. And this voice came from the tower, a bullhorn. "Bill, come on up here where you can see something." "Oh, it's Coach Bryant." Oh my gosh. And I had played for him in the Coaches All-America game 10 years before. And he had been wonderful. And it was a great coach for me. I just never forgot him. But anyhow, I was thrilled when he called me up in the tower with him. And he hemmed and hawed, and for a while I knew there was something he wanted to talk about. Finally, he said, "You ever talk to Dodd?" Because they had been real good friends prior to this controversy. And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He said, "Me and Dodd too old to be feuding." I said, "Yes, sir, I completely agree." He said, "I tell you what you do. I want you to go home, call Coach Dodd, and tell him I'll sponsor Georgia Tech back into the Southeastern Conference." Yes, sir. Well, I flew home, called Coach Dodd, and told him what Coach Bryant had said. And Coach Dodd said, "Well, Paul," he called him Paul. He said, "Paul's right. We're too old to be fussing at each other. So I'll call him, and we'll be friends again. But Georgia Tech will never get back in the Southeastern Conference because there are too many other schools that hate us." Mm-hmm. Those were his words. So I really, just through sheer happenstance, got caught in the middle of some really, really unusual situations. That was one of them.
You get drafted in the 20th round of the NFL draft in '64. And y'all got training camp at St. Norbert College in De Pere, Wisconsin. De Pere,
Wisconsin.
You've got to forgive my Walker County, Alabama pronunciation. But,
it's all right.
But there were two very interesting interactions. One with the aforementioned Bart Starr, the other one with your head coach, that left quite an impression on you. Tell us about that.
Well, there were a lot of interactions that left a powerful impression. The first was I had played in the college all-star game, and at that time a college all-star team was selected to play against the NFL champions, and we had played against the Cleveland Browns. It was the last time the Browns won the championship, by the way. And we played against them on a Friday night, I guess it was, in Chicago. And then I was supposed to fly to Green Bay to join the team, who was already in training camp. And we got to Milwaukee, and the people came on and said, "Mr. Curry, you've been bumped from the flight." And I said, no, this can't be happening. I'm going to be late for Vince Lombardi's training camp the first day. He'll cut me before I ever set foot on the field. So I walk in, I tried to big time it. I didn't know anything else to do. I'd never been out of College Park, Georgia, and here I was, and it was Milwaukee. We had a stop in Milwaukee, and they were bumping me from the flight. And the guy comes up and he said, "What's your problem, Mr. Curry?" I said, "Well, I just got bumped from the flight, and I've got to be in Green Bay today." He said, "Well, we'll get you on the first thing out tomorrow morning." I said, "No, you don't understand. I'm going to be late for Vince Lombardi's training camp." And I said, "By the way, what's your name, rank, and serial number? I'm going to make sure Coach Lombardi knows that you're the guy that took me off that airplane, and you're the reason that I'm late." I swear this happened. He went ghostly white. He goes around the counter and he starts calling people up. He got a small craft. He took my bags off the big plane, put them on the single engine plane, flew me to Manitowoc, Wisconsin, where a North Central Airline van picked me up and took me to the Packer training camp, and I was 15 minutes early. That was my first encounter, and it was really an encounter with the magic of Vince Lombardi. Mm-hmm. The fear that everybody seemed to have of him in that state. The second one, a few minutes later, when I started over to walk to dinner, and I realized somebody was walking next to me. And I don't know if this is the incident you're talking about.
Bart Starr.
And, oh my gosh, Mr. Starr. He said, "Don't call me Mr. I'm Bart. And welcome to the Green Bay Packers, Bill." I almost passed out. I couldn't believe it. He said, "I tell you what, how about you and me having dinner together? And I don't know what your faith is, but we have a wonderful Methodist minister." Well, Carol and I are Methodists. And Jerry and I get choked up trying to tell this. Jerry and I would love for you to go to church with us tomorrow and come have Sunday lunch at our house. That's how I was greeted. First of all, Lombardi was glad I was early. And second, Bart Starr walks to dinner with me and invites me to his house to his church and his house the next day, which I accepted. And he became one of the best friends that I've ever had in my life for the rest of his life.
But you got a knock on the door the very next morning, and you don't know who it is. You swing it open, and there's Coach Lombardi right there to greet you.
I thought it was one of the other rookies messing with me, because we had played the inter-squad game that Saturday night right after I reported, and I only went in to do a couple of long snaps, but I was in a Packer jersey for the first time ever, and wow, what a thrill! And there were a few other rookies that were still in the training camp, and so when there was a knock at my door at 7 o'clock the next morning, I was sure it was one of them. So I go open the door, and it's Vince Lombardi. Good grief. "Yes, Coach. Look, Bill, we've got an hour or two here. I've already been to Mass. I'd like to sit down and go over our plays with you." He had a yellow legal pad, and he drew every single running play and our basic protections on that yellow legal pad in about an hour. The offense was so simple, and yet it was complex enough that nobody could stop them for years. And I'd give anything if I had saved that. I don't have those yellow legal sheets. I wish I did. But it was a series of moments that were just magical and almost too much for a kid to take in.
Was that part of his brilliance, really the simplicity of the offense and his ability to kind of bore in and focus on running the sweep to perfection? Was it that mindset of perfection that contributed to Lombardi's brilliance?
Yes, that was a big part of it. It wasn't all of it, because there was so much more to him, and there was a lot I didn't understand, and it caused me to make some terrible mistakes later that I had to apologize for with him. But he was so powerful in his presence. He ingrained those 40 men with a culture. Each of us became a part of that culture, whether we really wanted to or not. And of course, we all wanted to be there. We all wanted to play in the NFL. We didn't want to be, we felt like we were being harassed every day. And he did. He made a point. He said, he told us, I'm going to push you, harass you. I'm going to make you angry. I'm going to scream at you. I'm going to do everything in my power to make you concentrate and understand that every single step you take, whether you line up properly in your stance, all of those things are going to affect our ability to win. And we're only here for one reason, and that is to win and win and win. And when you learn how to do that on the football field, you'll learn how to do it in life. That's my hope. And he stayed true to that in so many ways it would be hard to articulate, but over and over and over. It started with the very basic fundamentals like this. All right, as I said, I'm there on a Saturday night, and then he comes in Sunday morning, we draw plays. So then we go out for Monday practice. And there's an all-pro offensive line, basically. And the guy that was the obvious future Hall of Famer was Forrest Gregg. And I go out there, and Forrest is over on the side, and he's practicing his stance and starts. And he's been to 9 Pro Bowls. So I was so stupid. I said, Mr. Gregg, excuse me, but you're already all-pro. Well, it's not a big deal, Bill. Yeah, but it is. Yes, it is. Of course it is. I said, you're practicing your stance and your starts? He said, Bill, if I don't practice my stance and starts every day, I'll get whooped like a dog all year long. I never miss a day. Don't you ever miss a day of practicing your fundamentals. There were so many great lessons. I could go on and on and on and on.
You had the opportunity to be around a pro franchise with incredible tradition. You had an opportunity later in your life to be around a college football program with incredible tradition. Is the mania around those two fan bases, particularly in the 60s, was it as big in Green Bay as it was at Alabama?
Oh yeah, it sure was.
So they're as manic as Bama fans. Okay.
It was life and death.
Even then?
It still is.
Okay.
I mean, those people they're beautiful in one sense. They're wonderful as long as you're winning. And they're that great expectation. It just permeates the team. And not that it doesn't matter. It matters a lot how talented the team is. And there have been Packer teams that weren't so great. But I've always thought the Packers had a marked advantage. And then, ironically, through a series I was put on an expansion list and then traded, I ended up in Baltimore, where the situation was eerily similar. Because they call that stadium, Baltimore Memorial Stadium, the world's largest outdoor insane asylum. And we had that very same expectation. They expected you to win. And we all know how important quarterbacks are. And the guy at the first place was Bart Starr, and the guy at the second place was Johnny Unitas. And it just didn't get any better than that.
Is Green Bay similar to Tuscaloosa, and is Wisconsin kind of the Alabama of the North? Are there some similarities that you saw between those two places? Is that fair or not?
Similarity in the expectation of the community of excellence and what's expected of the players. Mm-hmm. I took our grandsons to a Packer game when they were teenagers. They're both in their 20s now. And I was sitting in the stands with one of them. We had our choice. We could sit in the booth or we could sit in the stands. It was really nice. And so we got to halftime, and Alex, he's our oldest grandson, and he was the captain of his high school football team about the time we went to this game. And I said, Well, Alex, and we got lucky. It was a nice day. It wasn't 10 below zero. So I said, you want to sit in the stands in the second half, or you want to go up in the booth? He said, I'm going up in the booth because if we don't, I'm going to kill the guy sitting behind us. And he had been hitting on Aaron Rodgers. This guy had been dog cussing Aaron Rodgers all day long, and Alex had gotten so mad at him he wanted to choke him. So I said, yeah, I better get you out of here. I knew he wouldn't do anything, but it's very emotional.
Yeah. So you had, in Green Bay, you had Lombardi and Starr, then you've got Shula and Unitas.
Yeah.
In our last interview that we had several years ago, you said, playing with the Unitas was like playing with God, but what made him great? What made him as a football player, his mindset, the way he approached the game, what was it about Unitas that made him great?
When anybody is great at that position in the NFL, it's a lot of things. With Unitas, if I had to choose the number one attribute, it'd be a dead heat. It'd be a tie. His work ethic and his charisma. And if you took either one of those out of the equation, I think it would have changed everything. But the first day I reported to the Baltimore Colt training camp, we're walking down to the practice field, about 99 degrees in Westminster, Maryland. And the Colt practice field was arranged so that there was a field up above and there was a field down below. And we were going down below. It was Western Maryland College. We were going down in the pit where it was even hotter. And Unitas had on a rubber jacket. And he was happy. He was whistling a tune or something. So I wanted to meet the great man. And I had been around for a couple of years. I had played in some world championship games. And I thought I was more impressed with Bill Curry than I should have been. So I was arrogant enough to say to the great man, gosh, Mr. Unitas, you're so happy going down here to this hot place and you got a rubber jacket on. You happy about going to football practice? He said, Billy, you're a long time dead. I said, what? Yeah, you're a long time dead. Well, what does that mean? We're not going to be on this earth very long, son. This is Unitas talking to me. He said, if you're not happy about where you're going today, maybe you need to go somewhere else. Oh, okay, my practice habits improved immediately. So that spread through the team, that attitude. He loved to practice football. And sure enough, and this is the part that is probably more important than that part, we practiced forever with Don Shula. The training camp was twice as hard as Lombardi's. People don't believe me when I say that. Pads twice a day, heat, no water, smash, full speed, run game in the morning, passing game in the afternoon. And we were on the field. We had special teams practice between the two practices. We were on the field like 5.5 hours. And I had to stay out for long snapping because I always had to do that. And I trudge up the hill. We had 3 shower heads, and you can't stop sweating, and your clothes are wet when you put them on. And it's just so miserable, and you're feeling so sorry for yourself. And I walk out, and it's starting to get dark. And I hear something down on the practice field. What could possibly? I mean, this is an hour after practice is over. So I walk back over to the edge. It's John Unitas and Raymond Berry still throwing pass routes, one after another. Dig, a post, a cut. I decided I'm going to practice like that from now on. Changed my life. He didn't say a word. He just practiced. He just worked harder than anybody.
You and Shula had a interesting exchange on your clip.
Yeah, we did.
Walk us through how all that went down.
Well, Shula, first of all, Coach Dodd had a lot of strong suits. So did Coach Lombardi, so did Shula. One of the things Coach Dodd did for us is he taught us to play every special team. And I was a long snapper, and I could also cover kickoffs and block on kickoff return, punt return, every special team. So I was so miserable having been put on the expansion list and claimed by the New Orleans Saints, who were not yet in existence. And my phone rang, and there was a voice claiming to be Don Shula. I almost smarted off because I thought it was one of my buddies. They knew I was crushed because I'd been put on that expansion list. And so I thought, maybe I better play it straight. So I said, okay, yes, sir, Coach Shula. And it was Don Shula. And he said, Bill, I'm calling you because I'm thinking about a trade. Now, what he really wanted was that number 1 draft choice that New Orleans had so he could get Bubba Smith. But there were a couple of players that were throw-ins, and I was going to be one of the throw-ins if I answered this question properly. He said, the reason I'm calling you is I want to ask you, I know you've been a starter with the Packers, but if I bring you to Baltimore, will you be okay with just playing special teams? Because he had seen film, I mean, we had played against them a lot. And I said, my answer was this. I said, Coach, I would walk to Baltimore to play for you. So the trade went through, and we get to the first game, first league game, and he makes me special teams captain. Wow, what a wonderful honor. And I got to play hard here. And Carolyn is bringing our little daughter, who was 5 weeks old, and they were going to fly up that very next week after the first game, because then we would know that I had made the team. And in those days, you could get cut in a heartbeat anytime. It didn't matter if it's league season or not. So sure enough, can you imagine walking out for the coin toss and the official says, this is Captain Unitas and Captain Curry. Who, Captain who? In fact, Alex Hawkins, who also had the same job, he became Captain Who in Baltimore. But for that moment, I was Captain Who. But I was so thrilled to be Shula's special teams captain, because at least in my knowledge, he was the first coach that really employed special teams to the extent that the Colts beat people on special teams all the time. And I knew what an advantage it would be because Coach Dodd had emphasized it so much. So I was just lucky in having those. I mean, I had great coaches at every stop. We're going into the game, and my family's coming in. I'm all excited. And sure enough, we're playing the Falcons, and I clipped Greg Brazina right in front of the Colt bench on an 80-yard punt return by Rick Volk.
But you didn't think you clipped him.
Well, no, I didn't think so. But Shula ran on the field, and when you cross that white line, the NFL is not a nice place. And if you cross the white line and you're in the field, then you're fair game. I mean, you don't think that, there's nothing logical about it. It's a jungle. And I was sure I didn't clip the guy, and Shula ran on the field and grabbed me and screamed some interesting profanity in my face. So I screamed some interesting profanity in his face. Brilliant. So we're watching the film on Tuesday morning, and the assistant coach said, Curry, is that a clip? Well, I didn't think so, but it might be. And he said, well, let me make a suggestion, son. Next time you decide to dog cuss the head coach on national television, you make damn sure it's not a clip. You got that? I said, I got it, Coach. So I went and found Shula, and I said, I need to talk to you. He took me in the equipment room. I'll never forget it. I was shaking like a leaf. I'm going to have a one-game career with Don Shula and the Baltimore Colts. And I said, I am so sorry, Coach. I lost my cool. I didn't think I had clipped the guy, and I screamed at you. It will never happen again, I promise. He smiled, and he said, I kind of like that. Just don't clip the guy. Wow. Whew. We played our hearts out for him. That's why nobody could beat us most of the time. I mean, one reason, and he's the winningest coach in the history of the NFL.
For a reason.
Yeah.
You know, when I think back, of course, I wasn't alive then. I mean, I was born in '77. But when I look at NFL films and I look back to that era and I see the tape on the fingers and the cold atmosphere at some of those games, I think about the Ice Bowl. I think about just incredible defense. The big face masks. Going back to that era. I mean, it was smash mouth football, and you had these guys like Jerry Mays and Dick Butkus that would absolutely knock your head off.
Yeah.
What was it like being in that environment?
I got my head knocked off a lot. And then I have had to learn to repay the favor. And you think you're being a hero when you do those things. You do it fair and square. You don't cheat, no cheap shots. That was the code wherever I had the privilege of playing. Nobody encouraged us to take cheap shots or try to hurt anybody. It was never our intention to do that. But you understand, if you really think about it, and if you want to pigeonhole, high school football is pity pat, college football is a petting zoo, and NFL football is a jungle. And when you step across that white line, nobody's going to help you out from the other side. That was the code in those days, and I imagine it's the same today. It would be expressed differently, but it was a survival thing. Because if you couldn't handle the fatigue and the frustration and the pain and the cheap shots that did happen, if you couldn't deal with that and do your job over and over and over, you weren't going to stay. You'd be gone, and somebody else would be playing your position. And everybody knew that.
My dad had an expression about that. He'd say that person is much of a man. I mean, that's pretty fitting, right? I mean, you had to be much of a man during that era.
Well, I played against a bunch of much of a man. Merlin Olsen and Joe Green and Alan Page and Willie Davis, my gosh, yes. Ray Nitschke, jeez. Butkus. Yeah, it was a violent place. And you had to learn to, and I'm not proud of this, but you had to learn to be a violent person for 60 minutes on Sunday.
The Super Bowl that gets so much pub now is the Colts Jets, and obviously Namath's guarantee, and that's a good story. That's a great story. It's a headline story, but what people don't talk about is what happened after that with respect to the Colts, and you have a pretty good run against the Jets for the next few years, and then you end up winning the Super Bowl. What were the keys to that?
Well, first of all, I have the irony that Joe Namath is a very good friend of mine, and I had to suffer through it, even though he's my buddy. I really couldn't celebrate with him for that on that occasion. But we played in the Senior Bowl together, and it's a funny thing when a center and a quarterback go on the practice field anywhere on any team. At any point, the first thing you do is center quarterback exchange. And after 10 or 15 minutes, I thought I would dislike Namath, especially since he had bombed us my senior year at Tech twice, not once, but twice. You couldn't help but love him. And my wife later proclaimed that she didn't like Joe at all. So I invited him to dinner while we were coaching at Alabama. And about 4 hours later, he walks out of our house, and Carolyn said, I was wrong about him. So the problem with Joe is he's a good guy. You would like for him to be a villain. He's not. That game, the thing that's sad about that game is that we were 15-1. The only game we lost all year was to the Cleveland Browns. We had just been to Cleveland and beat them 34-0 in the NFL championship game. And then we go down to Miami, and the Jets beat us, and they beat us. I mean, Matt Snell running the ball and Joe playing a very controlled game. He didn't throw a pass in the fourth quarter.
So you would say it wasn't a fluke?
No, it wasn't a fluke at all. And neither were the games that we beat them later. But we did turn it over a lot, which we had not done all year. Well, the Jets probably made that happen. And so we've had to live with that. From going into the game, being expected to come out as probably the greatest team of all time, we end up being remembered only as the biggest losers of all time. That's what happens in America. If you get in the big game in the United States of America, you better win it. Because if you don't, the only thing people are going to remember is that you're a loser, no matter what you did the rest of the season.
You played in the same division as O.J. Simpson. There's an incredible documentary called O.J. Made in America. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's a 5-part documentary directed by Ezra Edelman. But in the first episode, it shows his time at USC. But what is very just beautifully done is his time in Buffalo. And I was looking at some stats this morning, and he really didn't break out until those Lou Saban years. So
Yeah.
Late 60s, early 70s. Probably isn't the OJ that he was in 72, 73, right around there. We rushed for 2,000 yards. From your standpoint, how great was he?
The first time we ever faced him, we had a great defense. And I don't remember when his rookie year was. I don't remember exactly which year. But we were in Buffalo, and it was mud and slop and really cold. And he carried the ball, I believe, 22 times and gained 20 yards. And when he took the handoff for the 22nd time, he ran like a wild rhinoceros. I mean, exactly the way he had run the first time he handled the ball. He wasn't a bit cowed by the fact he had been hit so hard. He came at us the same way he did all day long. And everybody walked away and said, that guy's going to be special. He didn't make many yards. And we won the game. We had a good team. Buffalo was still, just coming on. And then I had the privilege of playing in the Pro Bowl with him. The Pro Bowl defense was required to be a 4-3. So they were in a 4-3, and the middle linebacker was Dick Butkus. So if I missed the block on Butkus, I knew he was good. There was going to be an explosion. He was going to knock the running back's teeth out. Well, we call a play where OJ's supposed to go off tackle to my right, and I went the wrong way. And when I went the wrong way, Butkus, who was reading my head, hesitated. He just did this. And I think we were on about the 8-yard line. And the next thing that happened was, OJ's in the back of the end zone. And Butkus is just standing there. I mean, the great Dick Butkus. And OJ runs back, picks me up and says, great block. I said, thank you. That's all I know of OJ. And I do not know what happened to him, and I am so sorry for all the things that changed in his life, whatever that was. I don't understand. But those are my memories of him.
Who are some other guys during your NFL playing career that you were just awed by? I mean, one name that's coming to mind is Roger Staubach. I mean, there are other people that obviously were great players. And let's talk offense for just a minute. Who were some offensive guys that in the NFL during your time that really impressed you?
Well, you mentioned Roger Staubach. In that college all-star game that we played in against the Browns, Roger was our starting quarterback. His backup was John Hewart, who was the Heisman Trophy winner from Notre Dame. And if Roger walked in this room right now and you asked him to be on this broadcast, he would point at me and say, Bill Curry is the reason I got knocked out of the college all-star game, because the weak side linebacker blitzed and hit him in the ribs and he had to leave the game. He's not correct about that. One of the few mistakes Roger ever made. I was not responsible for the weak side linebacker on that play. I was responsible for the middle linebacker, but that's not how he remembered. But we've teased about that for many years. He's a wonderful guy, and what a great player. He proved himself again and again, and ironically, we never ended up playing against him. When we played in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl V, we played against Craig Morton, and Roger didn't play. I don't know why Coach Landry made that decision, but he obviously knew something that we didn't. But we wanted to make that a redemption game and to make up for Super Bowl III. And offensively, we go down there and turn the ball over 7 times. So it turned out to be another embarrassment for us. Our defense won the game because the Cowboys couldn't score on us. Mike Curtis and Ray May and Ted Hendricks and just that phenomenal defense we had actually won Super Bowl V.
When people talk to you about your athletic career, do they want to talk more about NFL or do they want to talk about your coaching career? And do you ever tire of telling these stories?
I never get tired of telling the stories because I believe there's a lesson in every one of them. And I try not to pontificate and turn it into a, let me tell you what you should. No, I try not to do that. I try to just tell the stories, but I love doing it, and I get a lot of opportunities. And the answer to your question is complicated. It depends on where I am. If I'm in the Midwest or up east in Baltimore, like if I get invited to the Unitas Awards, which I just love to, his son still gives away the Golden Arm Award every year to the top college quarterback. If we're in those surroundings, then it's all NFL. But if I'm invited over to Alabama or back to Kentucky or out to Georgia Tech, especially out to Georgia Tech, and we have things here for Georgia Tech Letterman, then of course it's all about college. So I get to talk about both, and there are such vivid lessons that God has taught me, and I haven't always wanted to hear what he had to say, but the message gets driven home.
Back in Alabama, when they're kind of reviewing the 80s and the different hires that were made in the post-Bryant era, one of the things that people want to talk about is, you know, the way Alabama kind of dropped the ball with Bobby Bowden. That's something that comes up a lot. You ended up becoming the coach in '87. How did all that go down? Did Alabama contact you? How did you go from being the head coach at Georgia Tech to now I'm the new guy in Tuscaloosa?
Ray Perkins was my teammate for 6 years in Baltimore. We were very good friends. Ray wasn't real close to anybody outside his family, but as friendships go, we're about as close as teammates get. And my phone rang on New Year's Eve, and it was the single most shocking phone call I've ever received in my life. And he said, Bill, I want you to take this job. I said, what are you talking about, Perk? What job? He said, I want you to, I'm going to leave Alabama. I said, are you crazy? You can't do that. Don't do that. He said, no, I'm going back to the NFL, and I want you to take this job. I said, I was still so, I said, I tell you what, Perk, go have another drink and call me tomorrow, because I figured he must be drunk. I had never seen him drunk in my life. Are you crazy? They're not going to hire me at Alabama. I tell you what, Yeah, I really did say something like, have another drink, give my love to the family, have a good, he said, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you something. Dr. Joab Thomas is going to call you in 5 minutes, and you take it from there. But don't screw this up. I want you to take this job. I still didn't believe him. I really thought he was messing with me because he was, believe it or not, Ray Perkins was actually one of the jokesters on the Colt team. You didn't see that when he was a head coach ever, but I thought he was messing with me. And then my phone rang and it was Joab Thomas. And it all went so fast from there. It really was like a fairy tale. I called Coach Dodd expecting him to say, no, you stay right here, son. He said, you have to go. You have to go. You have to take our message back to the SEC. And he said, that president over there understands our principles about class attendance, follow the rules, integrity, win, and you will have a good experience over there. So everything about it was mysterious. I didn't know who any of the other candidates might be, but if they had a real chance to get Bobby Bowden, of course that's what they should have done.
I got to know Coach Perkins a little bit in an article that I did about 6 or 7 years ago, right around the time that you and I interviewed for the first time. And what a gracious person. And I think really, I would put both of you guys into this category, misunderstood. I mean, would you say that about Coach Perkins? I mean, you talk about his,
yeah, for sure.
He was funny. I mean, but he was also quirky, but also very misunderstood from an Alabama fan standpoint.
I don't know about the Alabama fans, but we loved him. I mean, he was a great teammate to have. And he might not even be a starter some years. But the year we won Super Bowl V, he made the biggest play that got us into Super Bowl V against the Raiders in Baltimore. We were struggling, and Perk he was gone for a touchdown, and he had a knack for doing that, which in the NFL, that earns you a lot of points with your teammates if you can help win the big games. And he knew how to do that. But he was also a delightful human being. We love the Perkins, and I miss him. I'm really sorry he's not with us anymore.
He said to me as I was leaving the interview, I was walking out of his house, and he said, "You are always welcome in this house," and that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And I won't forget that.
He meant that.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I want to talk about 1987, and I guess one of the glaring demerits, of that season is that Memphis loss. But then you come back and you beat Tennessee. You're sitting at 7-2, going to Notre Dame, and then the wheels fall off a little bit. How do you assess that season? Because it really had a lot of promise. You had good players, So when you're looking retrospectively at 87, what would you say?
Should have been better.
Yeah.
Head coach's responsibility is to get the maximum out of the players, and our head coach didn't do that. And I know some areas in retrospect, because if you love your team and you want the team to max out, and I always wanted that. Every head coach does. Every decent head coach wants that. And then you haven't gotten the maximum out of your guys, then you spend the rest of your life evaluating that. And I'm not going to get into specifics about individuals, but there were some things that we should have done that we didn't get done, and where I didn't read the opposition like I should have, and they cost us. And when you're the head coach, it's your responsibility.
How close is it sometimes when, between a 12-2 season and a 8-4 season?
2 plays.
Yeah.
That's how close it is. Yeah, really, a lot of times. I mean, there are key plays in every football game, and it's real easy when you know the plays and you know the defenses that you're up against, or vice versa, or in special teams cases. And you never forget those. Sadly, you're more likely to remember the negative things than the positive things. It'd be wonderful if if you just remembered the times that you got the job done, but that's not how it works.
Another game that stands out, I don't mean to harp on the negatives at all, but that Ole Miss game in '88, and we talked about before we went on about the brick, the famous brick. You can laugh about that now, and then the lack of offense that game. So, but you're still on the positive trajectory in '88. You're moving toward the next year, which was a 10-2 season. So how do you assess that '88 year looking back on it?
When Harry Gilmer is visiting and you're playing your homecoming game against Ole Miss, who has never beaten Alabama on Alabama soil, you can't lose that game. And probably deserve to have something thrown through your window. And we just got whipped. It was the oddest thing that we couldn't complete a pass. And you can make all kind of excuses, but the receivers were open and we didn't hit them. The next year we went down to Jackson, Mississippi, and we did a little better. We put 63 up. I couldn't stop it. I tried. I mean, I did not want to do that, but that still didn't make up for what happened at homecoming in '88.
But even in Jackson the next year, you had us a little nervous there for a minute.
A little nervous. Homer Smith was, again, our offensive coordinator, and it's 21-0 after about 5 minutes. That's what you're talking about. They had returned a kickoff, and then we had fumbled the ball, and they ran it in. And I said, Homer, have you got anything where we can score quickly? He said, oh, I think so. And Kevin Turner went down the middle on 4 verticals and in the end zone, and it just steamrolled from there.
Yeah. I want to talk about something. I want to shift gears for just a minute and talk about sideline attire, because when I was growing up, you were the head coach when I was a kid. I mean, I would go to we had season tickets to the Legion Field games, and when you look down there at the coach, I mean, in your era, you had the bar sweater, and then you had the game cap. I mean, was that all intentional? Was that part of your shtick? How did you decide this is what I'm going to wear on game day?
I didn't care what I wore. But sometimes there was a deal.
Right.
That I can't remember who was responsible for. We had a deal on the hat thing. If we would wear the hat, then they would give us so many hats for our players or something. And if we would wear the sweater, and then some folks thought that sweater indicated that I had lettered at Alabama. Wrong. It had no connection with me thinking I had somehow lettered at Alabama. I never lettered at Alabama. I lettered at Georgia Tech. But people read too much into sideline attire. And if you want to be a model, you need to go get in the modeling business. But I didn't care what I had on. I just wanted to be presentable, and I wanted to coach my team.
So generally speaking, do coaches have some options? I mean, or do they basically just wear whatever they put in front of them? And could you go to Goodies back then and say, you know what, I want that bar sweater, and that's what I'm wearing, and I don't care what anybody else says. This is what I'm wearing.
Well, deals emerged after that, like with Nike, and Nike would equip you and dress you
Yeah.
and all kind of nice things, and they would give them to you, and then they would give you a bunch of stuff for your team. I can't remember, and the hat deal was a deal.
Yeah, the game, I think, is what you
Yeah,
wore.
yeah.
Yeah. You had the bar, and then you had the circle.
Yeah, and I needed to wear a hat anyhow because I get skin cancers from the sun, but I couldn't figure why anybody cared what the coach had on, but they did.
Alabama fans especially. I mean, like,
Yeah.
look, to be honest with you, I don't like the fact that coaches are wearing the color black now. I mean, I just don't like it. It's crimson and white, and that's what I think you ought to wear.
I didn't even know he was doing
Well,
that.
now we've got Saban started wearing a little bit more black, and we've kind of incorporated that into the mix now. And I'm a traditionalist, so really one of the defining moments of your Alabama coaching career was in October of 1989 at Penn State. You've got a drawing in your office here of the desperation block.
Yeah.
What an incredible moment that was, and certainly from your standpoint, to see a player and a person like Thomas Rayam step up and have that kind of success. What was that like for you as a coach?
Well, first of all, we shouldn't have been in that situation because Blair Thomas and the Penn State offensive line had knocked us off the ball and driven the ball. And right before the field goal attempt was one of the most courageous calls I've ever seen by an official, because Blair Thomas, who was an outstanding back, he hits the ground about this far from the goal line and bounces into the end zone. That's my recollection. And the guy spotted the ball right where he should have. And I just thought he could have very easily, all he had to do is that. And
So it could have easily been a different outcome.
it could have been gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So that gave us a chance. And then desperation block is something that you only use. I mean, you sell out. Everybody's coming. We don't cover any fakes. If they wanted to run a little throw to the wing back or something, it would have worked because we weren't covering it. We were all coming. That's what desperation block means. We got 11. And we're going to do whatever we have to do to block this kick. And Thomas, with his great reach, and he had a great push, and got his big old paw up, and that was a wonderful moment.
But y'all had practiced that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You try to practice for everything.
And another incredible moment was when you met Joe Paterno after the game. How gracious he was in defeat.
Well, Joe's one of the great people I've ever known in football, and he's gotten a terrible bad rap on the stuff that happened up there with Jerry Sandusky, and I don't want to get into that because all of us who coached football for any length of time at all have love and respect for Joe and Sue Paterno. We still invite Sue down for the Peach Bowl, which is in the playoff series each year. One of the playoff games is played in our Peach Bowl game, and we invite people back that have won the Bobby Dodd Award, and Joe won it twice. And since he's no longer living, we still invite Sue. But yes, the way he handled that was with his typical grace and kindness, and I've never forgotten it.
Yeah, he congratulated you and said, "I'm so happy for you," after the game.
He did, and I thought, wow, I couldn't. I'm afraid I would not have been that nice.
And that's just a different perspective on him. I mean, when you think about Joe Paterno, and if you're a Bama fan, I mean, you think.
Well, Coach Bryant was the same way. I think the great ones, when they do lose, first of all, they don't lose very often, so they don't have to go through it much. But when they do, you see the respect that they have for the other team, the team that somehow managed to pull this off.
When you think back to your era, a lot of people, they mentioned that you never beat Auburn, but you beat Tennessee every time.
Yeah, but you got to beat Auburn.
You get
You have got to beat Auburn. If you're at Alabama, and I look at calls that I made in those games, and it really makes me sick. But yeah, we beat Tennessee, we beat Penn State every time, but you got to beat Auburn, and we knew that. We just didn't get it done.
You know what I like about you is that you own it.
Well,
I mean, most people wouldn't say that. Most coaches, a lot of coaches are very arrogant. I'm a former coach. You know, I ate, slept, and drank basketball when I was coaching.
yep,
But
have to.
you don't want to admit, like, yeah, I should have gotten it done and I didn't. And I respect that about you, that you're able to look at that situation and go, yeah, we should have beaten them. I mean, they were all close games. You know, 10-0, 15-10, and 30-20. You know, I mean, and winnable games. But let's talk about just that environment. Let's talk about Legion Field, and I want to talk about, you know, moving the game to Auburn, because that's been a huge deal. What was it like walking into that cathedral? You know, back in those days, the biggest games were at Legion Field. You know, and
Yeah.
then obviously Bama played in Tuscaloosa as well. But what was it like in that environment, and seeing the band and the Crimsonettes and just being a part of that whole atmosphere?
I didn't see any of that. I didn't see the Crimsonettes or whatever. Even though I was in the band in high school, I didn't see the band. I was so focused on what I was supposed to get done. And I'm so disappointed when we don't get it done. And I know whose responsibility it is. My dad was the greatest competitor I've ever known. He was a national weightlifting champion in the 3 Olympic lifts when I was a kid. And he was a tough son of a gun. One day he came home, he morphed into the retail business, came home in his suit and tie, and wanted to know why had the garbage not been taken out. I said, well, I didn't take it out, Dad, because the big garbage can out there is too full. He said, get the little garbage can and come with me. He walks out there in his business suit. He stands up on the garbage can, on top of the garbage, jumps up and down and compacts it. Gets out, takes my garbage can and dumps it on top of it and puts the top back on, hands me the can and said, don't ever make an excuse again as long as you live. Do you understand? I said, I believe I got it, Dad. So you don't make excuses. You do the best you can. You let the chips fall wherever they fall. Be sure you've given your best. And when you've given your best, that's all there is. To start making excuses or blame somebody else is a form of insanity, I think.
You know, the rumor mill back in Alabama, and you know how those things could go, is that basically Dye wrested the Iron Bowl away from Legion Field and got it to Auburn. What's your take on how the Iron Bowl got to a home and home series?
I was so lucky in my NFL career that we played in a lot of hostile stadiums. And then I get to Alabama, and we're getting ready to go to LSU in '87. And our defensive coordinator, Don Lindsay, is giving an impassioned speech to the defense. Man, it's going to be so loud, and those Cajuns, they're going to come in there and they're going to be all stoked up and screaming. It's going to be the loudest noise you've ever heard in your life. You're not going to believe it. And Willie Shepard raised his hand. And Don Lindsay said, well, what is it, Willie? He said, Todd don't lose in Baton Rouge, Coach. Wow. It was true. We didn't. We won. Some of my favorite moments ever in NFL football were times when Bart Starr or John Unitas would step in the huddle and said, let's shut these people up. And I thought, when the conversations began about going home and home, it made sense to me that it probably ought to be home and home. I was also very much aware that my opinion would not be considered as legitimate as a person with an Alabama pedigree, and Steve Sloan was the athletic director when these conversations were going on, and I thought it would be wonderful if we started playing home and home and we could go down there and win the game. So that was my intention, and we could have had I made some big mistakes in the first game at Auburn. I don't want to get into details, but that game was winnable. All three of them they beat us all three times, but we had a chance in all of them, and we should have done better.
What was
Anyhow, I was not intimidated by going to somebody else's loud stadium, and I didn't think it was necessarily fair for one team to have the home advantage, even though the crowd was split 50-50.
Who made the ultimate decision to do that? Do you remember?
I believe it was a combination of the athletic director and the board. That was such a big decision.
The board of both schools or just of Alabama?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think probably both. But my opinion was not asked. I didn't. If Coach Bryant had been the coach, we all know that the coach's opinion would have been a very big deal. I don't know with other coaches whether any of us would have. I don't know. My opinion was not asked, but I didn't. I had the attitude we should be able to play anywhere and win, whether it's Auburn, Tennessee, Penn State, any of them, and we should have gotten that done.
Did you feel like playing at Legion Field gave Alabama a little bit of an advantage over Auburn?
I never thought. I always thought, and maybe this is because of the influence of Lombardi and Shula, I always thought we could take the hostile stadium and turn it to our advantage by shutting them up. Let's shut these people up. Unitas would step in the huddle and say, we're going to shut these people up right now. And then he would do it. And sure enough, that big old stadium that was cheering for the other team, it got quiet. And we did it at Baton Rouge. We just didn't get it done at Auburn.
You're 26-10 over 3 years. You're guiding young men into manhood. You've got All-Americans. You've reached the Sugar Bowl. How do you review your time at Alabama? Do you see it as a success?
No. You got to do better than that. And I see the specific games and the moments in the games where I could have made the difference. And I wish with all my heart that we had done that. On the other hand, I am very proud of the guys who responded to the hard work and went to class and graduated and won our share. We won games. We didn't win as many as we should have, but we won some games that were really hard and taught us great lessons, coming back from big disappointments to excel in the next time we face that opponent. And they have come back and been grateful for the experience, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. After the Miami game, you're having contract negotiations with Alabama, not really going the way you want it to go. Obviously, there's some restrictions that they're putting on you. Don't really give you much of a raise. 6 days later, after the Miami game, this is my understanding, you decide to leave.
Yeah, I think anything I say about that situation would be negative toward some individuals, and I don't want to do that.
Okay.
I mean, I refuse to do that. It was made clear to me where the future of the program would like to go, and nobody in their right mind wants to stay where they aren't wanted. And so we decided to move on.
Mm-hmm. When you look back at your Alabama career and then just, we're, I guess, 36 years removed from that now, and look, I've been an Alabama fan my whole life, and we can be the hardest fan base on quarterbacks and coaches, and my question to you is, has there been healing across the years? Have there been some healing moments with you and the Alabama fans? And if you were gonna say something to Alabama fans right now, what would you say?
Oh, I would say this: I love you. Keep pulling for your team. You're an incredible fan base, and I don't have any hard feelings. Football is a tough deal. Nobody promises you that folks are going to love you everywhere you go, or that they're going to give you a chance. They're not obligated to do that. If you know what you're doing and you know what you're stepping into, I know that we should have done better, and I accept responsibility for that. I wish we had done better, but and especially the players at Alabama and the students. I love those people so very much to this day, and I see them and we greet each other with great warmth, and for that I'm eternally grateful.
One of the things I thought that was really cool, because a lot of times you don't know what kind of dynamics you're going to have with other coaches, and you and I were talking before we went on about your relationship with Wimp Sanderson. What an incredible thing that is for the football coach and the basketball coach to have a great relationship.
I just got lucky. I got so lucky. Actually, it happened everywhere I coached. The basketball coach ended up being a great friend and very helpful. Wimp was he was the most creative in his. I mean, I might come out of my office I'd be over there working at 5:30 in the morning, and I'd leave something in my car, so I'd go out there to get a playbook or something. Wimp would be sitting in my car. What are you doing, man? I just need to talk to you. I need to cheer you up. You're not going to cheer anybody up. I mean, we just had more fun back and forth, and I'm just so sorry that he's going through a hard time now.
Yeah.
And I love him like a brother.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, didn't you acquire one of his sport coats one time?
I went and took it out of his closet and wore it. I tried to keep it, but he wouldn't let me do that.
Do you remember what color it was? Was there like a
No,
green?
it was horrible.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All I remember is just hideous, like the rest of them.
See, now he got to pick his outfits.
Yeah, but he had a little better record.
Now, one thing I do want to talk about, and like you and I both know that all this stuff is fleeting. I mean, we were talking about that earlier. I mean, like rings. I mean, you look at all this stuff. This, by the way, this office is incredible. I mean, like, I'm loving it. I mean, I'm a historian. I fancy myself as a historian, but I love this office. I love looking at these old jerseys, but man, it's all gonna go to rust and dust, and
That's all it is.
It's all it is, and what matters is our faith.
God's love and His mercy, without which we would all be in deep, deep trouble. Grace in Christ is what matters. Of course, the other things are important too, and we have fun with them, and we get mad at each other, and we jump up and down and do crazy stuff, and we create games, and we make them into larger than life. But they all end up being thrown on the junk pile at some point. All this, my wife is a historian and an archivist, and preserved all these old jerseys in plastic so that the moths wouldn't eat them, and that's why we have them. One of my former players, who's just a great human being, he and his wife are responsible for all of this. They did this with their hands. I didn't even know they were doing it. Those are the real earthly rewards. And then the rewards in Christ are unspeakable, eternal. And the opportunity for living in eternity in a very different world from the one that we inhabit now, that's what we aspire to.
I want to be there with you.
Well, you will. I'll see you there.
Sounds good. Coach, thank you so much.
Thank you, Al.
So good to see you again.
Good to see you.